need is dollar, that's what I need. Hey, hey. Well, I need a dollar, that's what I need. Hey, hey. Said I need a dollar, that's what I need. And if I share with you my story, would you share your dollar with me?
It must be hard for people where you come from. I mean, in this pandemic. A white woman spoke to my South Asian friend the other day in that usual way nice white people rudely offer their arrogant colonial opinions like they are teaching you something, even though no one asked them for them. My friend responded so politely when I would have just slapped her, "Where I come from? Why don't you look outside your window at people here sleeping on the street?" Yeah, she pretty much nailed it. And this was just one of so many of these kinds of arrogant lies cloaked as opinions I have heard on where so-called real poverty is. I wish I could say this arrogant colonial point of view was unusual, but rather is constant and is perpetuated by POC and white people alike, rich and poor, working together to fuel, encourage, spawn the triple and violent myths of poverty, scarcity, and capitalism. Today's podcast from a poverty scholar is dedicated to lifting up that lie, uncovering the way that we all participate in it. The ongoing lie that if you have accumulated enough blood-stained dollars, stolen land, and things, you're successful. That if you only have enough to live on and support your family, you're a failure. And they're never ending and are promoted through media, education, and the world. Conversely, support, actual redistribution, as I call it, is monetized and turned into a business known as charity or philanthropy, or what I would call philanthro-pimping in the charity industrial complex. This business model is also based on the constant othering, categorizing, naming, framing of poor, disabled folks in poverty. The naming and tagging of the underserved, we're the at-risk, the underprivileged, the homeless people, the seniors, the youth, the disabled, the immigrants, and on and on and on. Embedded in these categories is an inherent acceptance that we in the United States don't have real poverty, which informs, funds, and legitimizes 21st century missionaries like the Peace Corps and the Red Cross and all kinds of actual church missions who claim to be doing God's work when they travel to save countless numbers of poor children, recolonize or perpetuate colonial education systems and land everywhere, none of which they were invited into or asked. And the myth of the orphan, which is indigenous children stolen from their villages and families so they can be saved by European, U.S. missionaries and churches and dollars. In these conversations about global poverty, there is never a conversation about radical redistribution or the frame we teach called community reparations. So indigenous peoples from Maya to Mama Africa can launch their own sovereign, self-determined solutions. There's only conversations about starting school for the poor African children, which are one of Oprah Winfrey's billionaire projects, or constant charity distributions of unhealthy food, supplies, and water to replace all that was stolen, pillaged, and extracted by corporations like Chevron and Nestle and so many more. Now, don't get me wrong. Poor people need to survive by any means necessary. And some of the other dangerous idiocy of so-called conscious people who help poor and indigenous people launch fair trade movements and small businesses and build wells and other so-called teach how to catch a fish projects across Mama Earth is the idea that all poor people labor should immediately stop. Yes, ultimately, it should all stop. And all people should get back every damn thing that was stolen, extracted, missionized out of and away from them. And all the billions and trillions of dollars of profits and interest made on centuries of colonial rape and robbery. But in the meantime, sometimes all you have is a monstrous job that pays $1 a day, manufacturing overpriced Western clothing for corpRape entities like Slave Mart and Target, or a coffee or a chocolate plantation job, which possibly a lot of family members rely on, which is not up to you, conscious white and rich people of all colors, and oftentimes is another error that occurs in the savior complexing, colonial othering, colonial decision-making, and the violence of helping. The very type of colonization which we teach in people school to wealth hoarders working to decolonize, degentrify their lives. But the othering is easy and soft and simple and so much easier than realizing that even with your body in that place you spent $800 to $1,500 to fly to, you are already benefiting off of the years of colonial terror, of the ravages of tourism and corpRape extraction of that sovereign land, whether you are there to do sexy missionary or helping work, or whether you're just there to have a good time. Hats off and love to Life and Debt, another powerful movie we require decolonizers to learn. Yeah, poverty in the U.S. must be hidden. If it didn't, and if we didn't all succeed in hoarding and stealing, then capitalism and its sisters, non-profiteering and neoliberalism, would have massively failed. Poor labor pools willing to clean rich people's toilets, dishes, and sheets and ship monsters-on products really fast would dry up as people would stop believing in the fake Americlan dream and refuse to risk their lives crossing false borders and mama oceans just to come here to this stolen land and perpetuate more theft for more stealers. Yeah, poverty's all around you, folks. Wealth hoarders and wannabe wealth hoarders. It exists in every neighborhood, barrio, and community across the United States. Thanks to all the policies that made you rich. The police who terrorize us, the blighting and taxing and destroying of poor people's neighborhoods and lands and lives. The anti-poor people laws you constantly put into place to ensure that poor people stay poor. The colonial lies and history washing that is called education of our poor children. And now with COVID and the evil violence of scam lords and the lie of rent, it's only increased homelessness and poverty and housing insecurity and desperate instability. The solutions aren't in our saving, our preaching, the selling and extracting of us poor peoples. The answers are in radical redistribution of hoarded land and resources, and for fellow poor folks, our self-donation, our self-determination, and our unselling of our ideas, our labor, our voices, our stories, our education, and our Mama Earth. Shouts out to Shack Dwellers Union in South Africa, Segurite Land Trust, the Zapatistas in Chiapas, Move Africa, Long Live John Africa, and Homefulness, a homeless people's solution to homelessness.
Times are coming and I reap what I done sow. Hey, hey. Well, let me tell you something. All that glitters ain't gold.